Hello everyone and welcome to the Student Art Podcast. I'm your host Ross Baxter and today we've got an awesome discussion for you. We have Ryan Locke, a lecturer and artist who teaches at Abertay University for the Computer Arts course, which I also attended myself. So the main topic for today is actually talking about student education for artists within games and within film. So hi Ryan, thank you very much for coming on.
Hi Ross, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So first off, for this, I just want to start off with, if you're okay with it, Ryan, just giving like a brief overview about what you do at Abertay, if that's all right.
Yeah, certainly. It's that sort of question that always scares me, man, because it's like it changes all the time. But largely, my primary role is obviously as an educator, mentor, which usually comes under that guise as lecturer. But I find as I've the older I get, I hate saying that in public for some reason. Not because I'm ashamed of it. It's more that I think the word lecturer kind of betrays most of what I do in terms of my daily practice, how I engage with students, how I engage with industry. So I tend to just say I'm a pracademic. Awesome. Rather than an academic, which works for me. Makes everybody else around the table wince a little bit though. Perfect. Which is fine. Go for it. Yeah, sorry. So it's just like so I was just sending you your question. I was like, what do I do? I think on a daily sort of basis, obviously, other than classes and lecturers, I've got sort of personal work, of course, any sort of freelance work I do for industry, and I'm also like an advocate. I like to go out there and speak to the public about education, games education, design and art education, largely, and like yourself, I think a drive for self-improvement is always necessary in the role.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I remember you posting on Twitter like you're at EGX and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like about getting yourself out there, and especially for students these days, it's like I'm not saying like game artists or just artists in general are quite quiet, but I think early on as like they're progressing, like it's about make sure that you can get your artwork out there, just so like it's easier for you to create like your foundation to like get jobs and stuff basically.
Yeah, man, that is so important. I guess I was speaking to my third years lately, and I'd noticed like it was getting to like week 4 of the semester, and like, they were all being very quiet and they weren't sharing things, and I was like, oh, this is going to be hard work. I've got 50 of these people staring at me, but they don't want to talk, and it's not because they're bad people or bad artists, nothing to do with that at all. It was like I just think there's that that there's maybe something to do with the social media world where we all talk in private channels. But I made it clear to them, it's like ultimately you want to be an artist or work in visual development, you're going to have to talk to people, you're going to have to show work, you're going to have to open up about what you do, and the message gets through, and gradually you start to watch a class of people slowly unveil who they are and what they do better and better, and you'll have seen this yourself in your own class, that little clusters start to form and little bits of community building start to happen. So I'm a big fan of that, and just trying to get people to talk, which can be difficult, obviously, because they're still students, they're still learning, and some people don't really, how do you make somebody who doesn't want to show their work?
I always, I completely agree with like what you're saying and stuff, because like I always feel like I was saying to you like a few weeks back, like I've always felt that like first of all every artist is very not precious. Well, yeah, I would actually say very precious with talking to people and showing their work and getting they're so afraid to be critiqued about certain things, whether it's like small art things, whether or not they're doing like what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right. And like when it comes to like discussion and like talking to new people, like obviously it's like say for first year students and stuff, like they're always obviously they're trying to get used to the new environment and stuff, and it could be very daunting at times, especially when there's like you don't know like the level you're at in comparison to everyone else. So it's like people like always want to compare themselves instead of just focusing on like the key aspect, which is having fun and just enjoying like the moment.
Yeah, and I think I totally understand the scenario. I think, ultimately so many people there are there to build confidence and to build their skills, and, they don't want to show work yet because they think that either the people in that class are better and will look down on them, or that maybe people aren't as mature as they should be and will say something that'll hurt them. And that's never really happened. I've never seen that. But I think I've noticed one thing gradually form out of especially higher education, is one day, is I call it one day syndrome, which is
Okay.
one day I'll show work off, or
Yeah.
I'll be good enough one day to be able to show my work and not be afraid. And my increasingly, I'm like, I try to make that one day happen sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
because I think you need to be used to the rhythm of showing work, and going through the motions. And it can feel bad for some people, but I don't know. It's I'm like, why are you here? You're here because you want to do this, and part of doing this is showing work.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, we have to break that barrier, right? So I can't make people do anything. That's just not how education works. But what I can do is obviously stress the point, and look inside people and go, if this is what you want to do, then I really want you to unfurl that emotion and just throw it out there, and get ready for how good it feels when somebody does like what you do.
Like I
Says
always,
yours.
oh
Go
sorry,
for it.
like
No, that's fine.
I always feel like when it comes to like what it's saying about trying to get people like just to be honest and straight to the point with it, I always feel like if they can just do it first, like get that out first year, then it's going to be like plain sailing from there. Because like I always think that a lot of students, because I kind of went the like a different route to get into university. I went to college and so forth, and when I was at college, like this is like the comparison I was always thinking about, like the difference between college of well where I went and university. When people go to university, like I'm not sure it's just because it's different like, system, but people are always overthinking about what to do and stuff instead of like taking it gradually. And when I was at college, they literally like what you're saying about like what do you want to do, and I just said to myself like I want to do 3D, and I literally just did 3D, and it was the course itself was literally just all about 3D, so it made it even easier for me. Whereas I think because university students when they have like their first year or second year, obviously it depends on where you go and that, but it's very there's so much options available to you, so 2D concept art, 3D art, animation, and I think it's just because the scale of university in comparison to college is a lot bigger, so there's more options available at uni, so like sometimes that can be daunting at times I guess, but it's
Oh,
also an
I
advantage as well.
it's I definitely, obviously, I'm as somebody that works university, I try to work as best as I can with the advantage part of that. But I also think I can't navigate this without talking about the disadvantages of having which essentially the computer arts program I work on is quite a wide base. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things in there. Um, and like you were saying, that is both its strength and its weakness. But I think being upfront about that from day one allows people to at least see it and navigate that their way. I don't like
Definitely.
people getting to. I think the hardest scenario possible is students who get all the way to like their final year, um, and they have no idea what they want. It's all that's the scariest one for
Yeah.
them more than us, of course. Where like day one, welcome to Abertay, or welcome to university. Doesn't matter what school you go to, it's always going to be the same. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of options available. What do you want to do? And that's the worst question ever to ask somebody who's young. Like these people come to university, 17, 18, and of course there's other ages as well. But generally they tend to be quite young, and and I'm like, oh, that's a question I hate, and I'm 30 something.
Yeah, definitely.
Never mind being like and a lot of the time it's they're like, I want to work in this, and I'm like, cool, right, how are we going to get you there? What's the best possible path for you? What do you want to do? And then sort of at least go, well, all these options are available, but I think eventually we're going to want to specialize at some point. And the course structure we have now is I think we take advantage of that rhythm a bit more, which is
Okay.
start with a wide base, but gradually head towards specialism, and largely it has worked quite well, especially that new curriculum we developed, and we were very happy with it. Still a bit things we need to fix here and there, of course.
Because that's one of the questions I was going to actually ask is like one of the main things I've realized. I kind of realized it in third year, but like one of the most common things I've heard from people in the industry and stuff is when it comes to curriculum and studies, is grades important? Like when it comes to like art at the end of the day, because when it comes to getting jobs and stuff, it's the portfolio that dictates that job. So
Mhm.
like when it comes to like student education, do you think there's still that not like old way of the old fashion of university in terms of like you need to still like do like your dissertation and stuff and you have to have like that written side, so doing essays, doing presentations and stuff. Like I understand the presentations, but do you think there should be like an 70% portfolio now, and then maybe at 20-30% like networking or learning more about like writing stuff and so forth, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got so much to say in this sort of thing, so I try to be careful not to take up the entire
Yeah,
podcast. But
no, it's okay.
I think it's like there are so many forces at work in games education, and there's a lot of you should do that, you should do more of this and less of this.
Yeah.
And actually, if we were to ever develop a program that incorporated everything that people think we should do, it would probably take about 12 years to complete.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that. Nobody wants to do it. Oh, I'm quite happy to teach it. I think it's like we've got a lot of voices out there, and that's including our own industry partners, people I'm in contact with, and obviously loads of alumni and ex-students as well that are like, oh, you should have done this. And I'm like, I don't disagree, not at all. I'm just saying there is a limit of capacity to what we can do in a in a 4-year teaching period. But I think definitely doesn't mean we can't refine and change what we do. And we do. There's actually a review process that's quite strict, and we do it more often than we ever used to. And increasingly, we're trying to make the curriculum a bit more flexible so that we can change it without having to go through huge, timely reviews. And
like that's what like when you're talking about like doing you're talking about like scale overall, like that's that's like what we were saying earlier. It's like it's the strength and the weakness. It's like because you can only have so many lecturers that can teach like certain things. Like when you have like say 2 people doing UI design, and then there's like 30 people doing 3D or 30 people doing concept art, then it's like at the end of the day you have to be like realistic and just the majority is doing this, but obviously you don't like leave them apart. But it's trying to get that fair balance.
I think a major thing for me is like what students want is obviously very taught approach to things. Not everybody, of course, but I think largely that's what students want. They want somebody that's going to sit down and show them how to do something, which you can imagine in any sort of scale that's actually terribly impractical. And we find that the first 2 years here, and I find any other course, are always the most software-driven ones. But the longer I've taught for, the more I've taught software, and I've done software for about 7 years now.
Okay.
What I realize is that you churn out people that make the same stuff, which makes some people happy, but and usually that's actually based on industry have said you need to teach people this, so we've done that, and then 4 years later the industry's changed, and then they say, why did you teach them that? I'm like, well, you told us to. And they're like, oh yeah, good point. So I find that the most important thing to me is that I want to develop artists who are independent thinkers, independent learners, people who can move and adapt with the times as well. And so as I've matured as an educator, I've taken my foot off that pedal a little bit and put my pedal more on the sort of dialogue-led mentorship thing. And I find increasingly that more students really appreciate that approach.
That's what you did. Sorry for cutting you off there.
No, that's fine.
That's what you did for our 3rd year module class. When I was in 3rd year for computer arts practice, is like that 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes of discussing our project with you in like the 2-hour class was like so key, if you know what I mean, in terms of like having that independent discussion, like that kind of dictated the progress. So then the next week when we came to your class, it was all about like where have we got up to and like how are we progressing. And
yeah, man, that was so much fun as well. I think I it's still probably my favorite module overall. It's the busiest module. Like, nothing on earth tires me out as much as that module. But I think at one point I think we were hit 68 students, and I'm like, that's 68 projects I've got to oversee in a week, right? And even if I wanted to, I couldn't teach software for 68 different projects. But what I can do is run the place like a studio. And what I can do is be an art director, somebody that does come along and sit down and go, cool, what's happening? What's going on? What have you made? And I find that not only do people gradually start to come around to my way of thinking in terms of like going, actually, this is really, really useful. I get to talk about things that are working, that aren't working, how I feel about it, you know, roadblocks I'm running into, stuff that can sometimes take years to get out of people is happening at a much higher pace. And it's there's a wonderful thing as well that happens is I get to know everybody in that class. One thing that happens in software tutorial is that if I sit at the front of the class for 2 hours and say, move the mouse here, click this button, do the thing here, loads of people are like, oh, this is super useful. Loads of people are bored. Some people are ahead of me. Some people are behind me. But one thing that doesn't happen is we don't talk to each other. They don't get to know me. And the worst part, I don't get to know the student. And so one thing that happens with that third year module is that pretty much everybody in that class becomes, you know, we have a much more adult relationship by the time we get to fourth year. And you know that yourself, you know, it's
like our group, like, well, it's not like there's like a lot of different groups, but like when you find who you're like what people to work with to improve yourself, and like that's like developed through your friendships and stuff, and the overall discussions you have. Like when it comes to like that third year module, like I'm not sure, do you think maybe of that sort of like I know it's happening now, so I'm not sure what's happening at Abertay now since I've graduated, but do you think having that sort of system early on, that sort of approach, like in first and second years, maybe too daunting to have straight away, or do you think it'll be better to have like the more openness approach in first and second year?
I'm not sure how isolated I might be in terms of staff on this one, but I actually believe deeply that first year should be one of the hardest years. And when I say hardest, I don't mean intimidating. I mean in terms of just, if I ask for something, it happens, it gets done. Just that basic element of discipline. And even if people don't do things for me, the last thing I do is go crazy and shout. I just don't talk about it. And that's worse. Like that leaves them in this part where like, oh, he's not happy. And it's largely more about, it's a standard setting exercise more than anything. I get a bunch of these fresh-faced first years in, and they meet me, and I'm warm, I'm accepting, but I want stuff done. And we set that very clearly now. I don't see first years until second semester, so they've had other people, and sometimes my approach can be a bit of a shock to them because I'm like, right, cool, we've just here is the coursework. That's weeks away. Don't worry about that. Here's the class. Let's get loads of stuff done. Quite intense classes, and then also by next week I want this done. And if it's not on that wall, I'm going to wonder why, and even then I'm also like, I leave room for it. It says like I want things done, but if you exceed that or break my rules, you got to tell me why you broke my rules. The standard, that's kind of the rhythm that sets, is actually really good. It creates a very clear barrier between us, but also we talk about things, we talk about arts, we talk about design. It gives us always a platform every week that everybody's on. They've done something for me and I can give something back. Like
that's the main thing. It's like at the end of the day, it's all about just doing art and having fun with it and exploring new things and talking to people most of the time. Like, because one of my other questions is like, when it comes to like throughout all university from first to fourth year, would you say there's like anything specifically students should start doing more and also start doing less when it comes to going through university? Like obviously like the most common thing is that when, like we were talking about before, is people expect to be good artists by not doing art. Like they're doing less, like they're saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but they're not actually doing anything, if you know what I mean. Like they're delaying it, and there's like that becomes a habit.
I think that's, it kind of relates to that one day syndrome. One day I'll do the thing, one day I'll do this, one day I'll wake up and get out of bed early and sit down and do all the work. And I basically, I don't want to sound like, a hard ass. I'm definitely not. But it's more that I don't shy away from the honest discussion either with some people. And it's about recognizing, is it plain laziness? or is there something else happening? Because obviously, there's a lot of students in a room. Sometimes there are actual medical reasons as well. Um, but I think increasingly it's, some people in that room are like, "Why am I here?" And I'll not convince them. I'll say, "Cool, you tell me why you're here."
Mm-hmm.
And you might catch one or two out that don't really know. And I'm like, I don't mind if you don't know. Says
It's the
because
honesty.
yeah, it's more about I have enough passion to give some away. And I'm like, okay, you're here anyway, right? So maybe it's worth trying this out, and you might like it. And
Mm-hmm.
you'd be honest. See, the reason I don't mind that so much is that I've done it with somebody before, and they now work in the games industry as one of the best sort of concept designers I know personally. And I won't give names away, but somebody that had no idea why they're in that room to
Yeah.
somebody that works as a concept designer was like, personally, I was like, that's one of the best mentorships I've ever had.
That's awesome.
And you get lots of moments like that. And of course, it's in university. Sometimes people come and they go, they enter and they go, not for me. See you later.
Like
Some people are.
it's that
Um,
like experimentation that students like need to do more of, if you know what I mean. And just being open to new things. Like
yeah.
one of the most common things I think with 2D artists, not just 2D artists in general, but it's like I guess 3D artists are the same thing, but exploring the advantages of 3D to aid your 2D art, and then like 3D artists exploring certain things. Like say you're a character artist. Like I did a video a while back, and I got a weird. I'm not sure what everyone's comments is going to be on this, but it's like I said that drawing was very important to being good at art just in general. Even though it's not like a necessity in the industry that we're in today. Like people don't look at your drawing skills to be a 3D environment artist. However, it's like I always feel that kind of dictates like your progress to like visually see something, like doing anatomy studies, like life drawing and stuff. Like I think artists need to be more open to like learning new things, like other areas to enhance their work even further. So like concept artists doing 3D, maybe a little bit of photo bashing, but not letting that overtake it, if you know what I mean.
I think nail on the head there, Ross. For me, it's like any artist doing a bit more of something else is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of, if I go back a little bit there, I would never presume to tell all students to do a certain thing. But I think if it comes to that one, the one that everyone it always comes up is to draw more. And I would say, I don't want you to be a good drawer.
Yeah.
You might get there one day. I think you should come to university with drawing skills, certainly. Says, but there are ways to enhance those, even if you don't. But drawing more. I mean, try to think about what drawing is and what a bunch of drawing represents. Okay, is observation more than anything.
Definitely.
And I don't care if you're not a great drawer. I could make you a great drawer eventually because I'll just give you loads of stuff to do, and I know that practice will always make somebody better at what they do. Especially if they're reflecting on it and we're talking about things that are going right and things that are going wrong. But the important part is that some people don't understand. You just say draw more all the time. That doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, actually, it says you're forgetting what I'm actually asking, which is to look, to understand, to see how things in the world translate to 2D. And that's even for 3D artists, like
Of
yourself,
course.
you
Yeah.
remember that amazing project you did on anatomy studies. So
Yeah.
much of that was actually observation. It's looking and understanding a form, a thing, an object, a science, a technology, an industry, anything like that. Drawing is just evidence of it more than anything.
Like I always felt that when it came to like just working on projects, a lot of people like when it comes to, like even like I did this myself. Like I'm one of the biggest like people who did this like too much, and I've learned my mistakes. But it's like just because you put in like lots and lots of work, that does not mean you're learning. Like I used to do silly hours, like talking like 16 hours crazy days, and then I realized what's the point, because at the end of the day I was like, I can learn better in like increments of half an hour slots to like an hour slot of anatomy studies. For example, when I was doing learning my anatomy studies, like I learned so much more. So it's like when we're talking about people learning new things such as drawing, it's like just those quick sketches of
Yeah.
the observation that you're discussing. It's like people have to realize that there's a difference between like just putting tons of hours in it, and then good study, if you know what I mean, like good actual practice.
Absolutely. I that comes down to a phrase that I kind of live by, which is work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And now there's in betweens there, of course. In some cases, some people need to be told, right, you need to work a bit harder.
Yeah.
Because doing one drawing a week for a class, right? That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
It means that's just, and I don't want to say laziness, because that's such a harsh criticism. It's just, it's distraction. There's probably other things that they're doing instead of the thing they really want in their heart of hearts. Some people do need to work harder.
Yeah.
But generally, like, I think, when you reach that point yourself where you're working very hard, doesn't mean you're working very smart. And I think in higher education, I part of what we're expected to do is obviously understand teaching, research and methodology and theory and all that stuff, and I actually I'm a big fan of bite-sized learning anyway. So I actually make students figure out bite-sized approaches to their understanding of their subject area. Actually, one was recently, I think I've got 2 people doing anatomical studies in this year's group, right?
Is that third or fourth year? Is that third years or
third years? Yeah. Really great group, by the way. Lovely people.
Awesome.
And like huge variation of projects again. And I've got 49 of them.
Wow. Okay.
So that's still a large number, but wow, man, a drop from last year. Way better. And I was like, okay, so again, let's look for the bite-size approach. And it's like, so somebody's starting this really kind of rich research into anatomy, and I'm like, okay, so give me who's a really great anatomical artist. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Now tell me, find one. It says, give me examples of great anatomy in art and fine art. And I'm like, so they go and they give me, here's some artists, here's some sculptors, and I'm like, cool, but you want to sculpt, right? Yeah. So let's go down to sculpture. Do you know the prime fundamentals or principles of sculpting? And they're like, oh no, I don't. And I'm like, cool, let's figure that out. And then just these little steps, little things we're figuring out. And then increasingly, I actually, people are doing sculpting, I kind of suggest it, when I suggest it pretty firmly, that they buy a bit of clay.
All right, okay,
just to play about with. So some of them she's already started, and then she just brought these photographs in of her first kind of foray into sculpting, and she's making little 3D models and trying to learn anatomy that way. And I'm like, see, again, it's like, I don't want her to be a great clay sculptor, because she wants to be a digital sculptor, of course. But I'm saying, look, all that's happening here is evidence of your understanding of the subject matter more than anything. Same way drawing would be. And she was like, yeah, that's a really good point. And I was like, that information, that knowledge will always translate to digital medium. Certainly, it's not going to teach you the interface for ZBrush or the process or the workflow that ZBrush needs, but that comes later anyway. That's something that's just formal. You can learn that.
Yeah, it's like the massive difference between it's like that first few steps. It's always like it's the first 90% of any project that's like the main That's like the main learning part, and then the last 10% I've always felt it's just people spend the most time in the last 10%, which is the details and that. But it's like people just like going through all these different iterations, whether it's trying to get a concept silhouette right or just sketching out rough ideas on a piece of paper. It's like it's that journey and discussion of constant iteration that is the main learning part.
You've got to unfocus and always start with the big things first, getting those basic sort of, what's in the frame, and then working down into those big shapes, then medium shapes, and then small shapes, then obviously the macro shapes. That's, a lot of people want to get to the nice looking thing as quick as possible. And I'm like, well, you've painted something that's fundamentally flawed. The drawing isn't right. The perspective isn't right. The forms aren't working. There's a lot of things that just aren't working here. And all of that was solvable in the first 10%. If you just worked through it, then that would have solved so many problems that you're facing right now. And they're like, oh yeah, good point. And it's just that I think it's impatience. We want things done, we want them finished, and that's it. that's actually a pretty natural thing to want to do. So you just gotta watch it. I think if people learn themselves and who they are and how they approach work, they start to notice these things about how they do things, right?
Yeah.
And so they can catch it. If you write that down somewhere, then you know you're going to do it again. And so you can actually start to circumvent some of your own bad habits and produce better habits, which actually leads to obviously more successful artists and designers, which is great. But also, I want to, maybe leave some room for error. I think an amazing sort of concept artist I seen at Industry Works last month, just towards the end of August, there was an amazing talk by Jan Erskine, and
Is this online?
he. No, I think you can find it online on YouTube. I did a wonderful talk about serendipity in art, which is, as one of my research areas, is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Artists who create the right conditions and space for serendipity or happy accidents, essentially. And you've got to watch out for that too. So and that's a really hard piece of advice to give,
Yeah.
because
Don't know when it's gonna happen.
yeah, everyone's personality is different too. Everyone's workflow is different. But I'm always like, don't be too precise in the early process. Let some things happen. End of the day, we work in a digital medium largely, okay? Duplicating anything doesn't cost us a penny.
Yeah.
So duplicate it and try different things, and I find that variation and iteration allows for a little bit of random in the process, and that random variation can be actually where a lot of originality, a lot of style, and a lot of character and personality in your work can stem from.
That's what that's sort of what I found out. Not recently, but like in the last like sort of year of sculpting. Like I think a lot of when people go into ZBrush or when they start off art, only when it comes to 3D, I guess, but everyone always thinks symmetrically, I think, and it's like some people don't just break the barrier straight away. Like say when you're going to ZBrush, sometimes people won't be like open to just like using a move brush and just like pulling it drastically and like making like breaking up the silhouette and really trying to push the forms. So like as I've realized as I'm like sculpting, because I'm working on a project at the moment, a Harry Potter project, and I realized that my environment work just looks so much more, I don't know, meaningful rather than so like not cliche, but it just looks less dull now because I've been experimenting with these different forms and stuff, and it makes it just more enjoyable as well because you're really able to like just push it like overall as a piece.
Yeah, I think I'm not afraid to use the word fun anymore. I think
Yeah.
you've got to look for that joy in your work.
I don't think enough of people use that word though.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
one thing crazy is like I always like to say to people is like why wouldn't you want to do something that's fun? Like you should just do it because you enjoy it. Like I know it's like it's so like so many people overthink a lot of things when it comes to the word fun. When
Yeah.
you can't just be honest with it, and I'm just like just go with it and just see what happens.
I think that's more frustrating to me because the amount of projects I've looked at where I see the fun right away. I can
Right.
see the enjoyment in it, and the person executing the project can't. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? You don't see this? I'm sitting, sometimes talking to these people, and I'm the one making all the noises and and pointing at things and going, you could do this and this and this, and like,
Yeah.
oh, my imagination starts to work overtime, and then, but luckily that rubs off a little bit, and then they start to see it, and I'm like, see, do you see it now? And they're like, yeah, I get it, and I'm like, okay, right. What's more annoying to me is that I'm more excited about your project than you are, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that at some point in the next couple of weeks that flips, and they go, okay, deal, right? And I shake their hands on it and go, okay, that's got it. Like, you've signed off on that. You've agreed with me.
Like I
And
think like I kind of think that comes down to like not overthinking it, and like everyone always wants to make the best piece of art possible, but because they have that burden on top of them, it just like depletes them, and like they feel instant pressure, and they've barely even started the project, and they're already like, oh my god, it's not looking good. It's like, for example, once again going back into ZBrush in 3D, the best way to make the best piece I've always felt is starting very low poly and stretch, and then pushing the forms instead of even thinking about detail. So it's always about silhouette and storytelling. Like storytelling, like tells it's the main piece. It's like 70% I always think it's like of making a strong environment or character or whatever it is. It's just trying to be messy
Again,
first of
even
all.
absolutely, getting something that's striking, it's really well proportioned, and it makes a statement even before there's an inch or an element of detail
Yeah.
is always so important, and so much great design is solved so early, and I think it actually brings me to another point as well. I think when we talk about fun, we do have to talk about the more formal and sensible side of things as well, which is, it's the design solution. We got to remember that there's a problem to be solved, and we're looking for the best possible solution that we can do in the time that we've given, right? And of course that you can have a lot of fun on the way, but eventually you're going to want to catch those and go, right, this is definitely aiming towards something that has to be finalized and presented. So like, while things can be fun, the sensible part does happen. It usually happens later on though.
And then it's it's like what you're saying about being able to finish it. That's like another thing. Is obviously like a strong skill, and like you're gonna have to do when it comes to jobs. It's like you can like make tons of awesome different like ideas and stuff, but it's then like polishing it so it's then ready for like to call it complete, and being able to say I complete projects, and being able to like not just create things just for the sake of it, actually having a purpose for it as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember it was an amazing. If you've ever looked at Jake Parker, he does amazing sort of videos himself. He's the guy that runs the Inktober
All right, okay,
event.
awesome.
He's got an amazing website and YouTube channel. Everyone should check it out.
Jake
Especially if you're
Parker.
especially illustrators or concept designers looking to kind of expand their minds a little bit. He's got some really interesting things to say. Big fan of him. But he has a whole video on which is called "Just Finish It." No matter what you do, just finish it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of increasingly, especially a lot of students who, they've done a piece of coursework and they've submitted it, and there's the stress of reaching that deadline. But you'd be amazed the amount of people who don't look at that project ever again. And I'm like, well, you did good work there. Sure, you may, even if it did get a good grade, I'm like, open that up again and finish it. Polish it up, get it on your portfolio. And even if it was like a grade that wasn't something you were too happy with, even the C's, even the D's, open it up. Think about what went wrong. Just because it's being marked, just because it's finished by, that deadline, doesn't mean it's ready to show yet, right? And there's nothing wrong with going back to something a few weeks later, a few months, even a few years later, and going, there was good in this. How can I get that to look a bit better? How can I present that? Of course, it gets to a point where you've moved way past something. Then you can just forget it, right? But, early on, I think there's a lot of, like, especially fourth year, final year projects. I'm like, I've seen great work here, but that just needs finished,
Do you think when it comes to, like, because I know this, like, it was definitely for me, and I know a lot of people are like this, like, when it comes to projects, when I was doing like third year, I was overthinking my grade, rather than overthinking the artwork. It wasn't, well, not overthinking, but I think
let's
all art
let's
is,
talk about grades, man.
yeah,
Let's talk about that.
well, all art is literally, well, not all artists. I can't say that's too drastic, but it's like grades at the end of the day, like the amount of people I've talked to from getting advice from people, even like Double Negative, people from Ubisoft, they've literally all said to me, none of that matters. Yes, it does in a way, I guess, but it like it'll show that you're working and stuff, and it shows that you're putting in the time. But if you're good at like 3D, 2D, or whatever art it is, does grades matter?
Man, I've got so much to say here, and I'll try to keep it brief. But like, it's I think we got to think about what grades are, and the systems, and the pressures, and the formal procedures that make sure that things like grades stay in place, right?
Okay.
So there's a whole mechanism of education, parents, students, and surveys, whole bodies of people that are designed to almost keep all that going, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, what is a grade? It's a metric, right? That's all it is. It's a measure of success, or supposed success at education. It's at that level, right?
Okay.
After education, and I think certain people would see me burned alive for saying this, but after education, that means nothing.
Yeah.
In our field particularly. Now, I'll have to be super clear here. People who do really well in grades, especially in their final year or their third year, tend to indicate that they're doing well. Of
Okay.
course it does, right? And there's changes I would like to make to that system, but I don't want to undermine people here whatsoever,
Yeah.
because I've seen people with, grades that they were unhappy with still reach success. But it's about, where does that grade matter, right?
Yeah.
So it might matter to your parents because they're terribly proud of you. They want to hear that you're doing well. Of course, that matters. It might matter to you because you need to know that you're doing well, that you've achieved a mark.
That was the
And
thing for me.
everybody, and I think, here's the metric, right? Is that in education, if somebody isn't getting an A plus, they're probably like, why did I not get the A plus? And I'll tell them why. But it'll never ever stop it hurting. You'll never, they're like, it's just that everybody wants that top grade and they wonder why they didn't get it. And no matter how much feedback or answers I give them, I still won't get them the A plus. And I think that's a strange metric for art and design institutions to have. I would personally love to get rid of it, but it's there and I deal with it and I try to make sure that the feedback says as much as it can. But to industry, I think that's really where this question's kind of going, is do industry care what your grade is?
Yeah.
Probably not. Now, I do increasingly see that industry do care that you have a degree, which has been great, but not to everyone. At the end of the day, artists and designers live by their portfolio.
Because that's the thing though, is like a lot of people, a lot of students think that the grades, like say they're getting really good grades, like say they get all A pluses or all A's and stuff, and they get their first class honors, like they think that means they're going to get a job, and that never means anything, if you know what I mean. Obviously it can, like it shows that you're putting in the time in that, and it shows you're doing well, like you were saying, but it's like that portfolio is. I still think for some reason, I know it sounds so drastic, but I honestly think it's like a 95% to 5% ratio based on how, like, just generally honesty it is. Because like out of all the talks I've watched, from GDC to other podcasts to talking to people in the field, like if I ask them just straight up, it's like, does this matter? Like they say no.
Oh man, it's like it's there's no secret to it, I think it's about learning to talk about where that grade matters, and I think it is to certain people and to a certain time in your life that grade matters, and you should obviously always aim for the top.
Yeah, definitely.
But the general consensus though tends to align quite well. People who are getting A's in their portfolios and A's for their work, they're going to do well in industry, right?
Yeah.
Not always, because there's some people who, because they got an A, think they're above things. I've seen that happen. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't undermine everything now. Stop.
That's another common thing that I've realized, is that it's like people still compare, like students always compare themselves with other students. But they don't realize that at the end of the day, technically you should be comparing yourself. Well, you shouldn't be comparing yourself, but you should always be aiming for people who are in the industry, like, because that's like the standard that you need to get a job. So if you're comparing yourself at like even the slightest, like you should just, as students, you literally should just be helping each other and like supporting, and just get rid of that sort of ego. Like no one in the industry wants that ego to work with. Like say someone's just like they think they're the best, and that's not going to get you anywhere, if you know what I mean. It's literally being able to work as a team.
I've never met anyone who's went, they have a huge ego. That was great fun to work with, It doesn't happen. It's like it's collaborative. You've got to work with people, and sometimes for long hours every day, and you've got to get on with each other. You've got to get to the end of a project, and it's essential that that you're adaptable, that you're friendly, you're personable, that you have respect for those around you. And most cases, I'd say actually 99% of people generally are. It's very rare I come across somebody with an ego problem, and I'm usually very good at solving it for them as well. Bring them down a couple of levels, and not because I want a power trip, but because I know it's good for them.
It's being like realistic with people, like just giving
absolutely,
just being truthful, and it's like it may hurt depending on like who you are, what type of person you are. Like I think that also comes down to like how you speak to people. Like it's very important, like especially when certain people aren't as confident. Like you have to be able to like know when to maybe increase someone's confidence, and then maybe when to just be like truthful with them, if you know what I mean.
Ross, that brings me right back to something so important, right? And we talked about that, me getting to know the class, talking
Yeah,
directly with them every week. That's why that's so important.
yeah,
Because you don't, if I was teaching software all the time, that would never happen. I'd never get to see it. I wouldn't know how someone talks about their work. I wouldn't know how shy they were, or how confident they were, how competent they are with their skills, how well they speak about their subject area. So much of that would disappear completely. And I find that that is so vital and important these days.
yeah.
And like, I have no intention of changing that model. It works so well, especially at third year onwards. And I'm actually very happy with it because I've met with people and I'm like, oh, you're so quiet, like, and like, I reckon you really love what you do,
Yeah.
and that your heart is bursting with things to say. So I'm like, let me in a little bit, let's talk about the things that you love, what's driving you, and you'd be amazed the conversations you have. And it's been great, and it's and I think not that it matters to me, but the module surveys every year say the same thing. They're like, that changed me. That changed how I work. I'm really glad that system is there, where I can actually meet and talk with somebody. Usually, I say once a week, but no, it's not always once a week, But it's just that there's more value to those interactions sometimes than me sitting there going, "This is how you create a box in Maya. This is how you make the box subdivide." And it's like the internet teaches you all that practical stuff. I could never ever compete with YouTube. I just couldn't. I could work my whole life, and I would never ever compete with all the information that's available to students today.
There's so much free stuff now. Like it's crazy how much there is, but it's like it's crazy also how many people don't realize it. It's like there's so much stuff at your fingertips. All you have to do is press play, and
exactly
just give the time to like just to commit and stuff. Like one of the main things I noticed as well during university was like how very few people liked presentations.
Oh.
And I it's weird because I always felt it's because of my upbringing, but I'm very I love presentations, and it's kind of, I'm not sure it's because of my like sport upbringing and stuff coming like from my dad and that, but I've always been very I like to talk about how talk about the project I'm working on and just show like how much having fun I'm enjoying it, if you know what I mean. And like a lot of students think that's like a negative doing presentations, but they don't realize how like that communication part, like you can be a really good communicator and not the best portfolio person and get a job. Like if you show that you're like committed as well, obviously, but it's like it plays such a huge part of your life in general, not just in work, just like the environment you're around with your family and that. It's like being able to get out of your shell and just like experience new things.
Yeah, and like I find, if there's that natural organic path, which is you follow your natural route in life, to become who you're meant to be, to do the work that you like doing. Eventually, you're going to have the conversations willingly and more easily with the people that you want to have them with, because you're surrounding yourself with the right people. Artists, designers that are interested in your subject area. You're always going to have a ton of things to talk about, even if you're a quiet person. Gradually you're going to want to chip in and say things. And I think one of the phrases I use all the time is like, look at me guys, I'm a professional nerd, I play games, I love design, I watch films, let's talk about comic books, let's talk about games, and they light up a little bit. They're like, yeah, that's what I want to talk about. And I'm like, also let's talk about how they're designed, because that's the juicy stuff. And I think those, if you, and again, like it's that conversation thing, if people are having those conversations, then they might not be so nervous or so self-conflicted. They start to open up, and if I can help that, I will. And I gradually, they start to overhear each other's conversations, and you see people spinning around in their chairs going, "What, you like that too?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, good. Like you two need to talk." And I've seen amazing things in education. And we know what it's like. Education gets a bad rap everywhere right now. There's no positive things to be said about it in any of the newspapers, any of the forums, because it's easy to rap on, because it never defends itself, right? No one from education floats into these conversations and goes, well, actually. And on social media as well, I've seen students absolutely beat the living daylights out of lecturers, and these are lecturers that have sometimes bent over backwards to help them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody, they don't rush to defend themselves. And I'm actually, I'm pretty pro education. I think it can change people's lives. I think it can inform what they do, and it can really help people get to where they want to go in life. I've seen it too many times working for so many people. Of course, there are people that it doesn't work for, and that's okay. That's totally okay. As long as they figure it out early. I don't want anybody getting into years of debt for no reason. Who the hell? The only people interested in that's a bank somewhere, and I'm not a bank. I don't benefit or profit from that. I will tell somebody to their face if they're in the wrong place, but it's so rare that they actually are.
It's like the main. It's the main thing when it comes to, like, I know we've discussed quite a lot of it, but it's just like when you start first year, like that first, obviously it can take maybe a few weeks to know if it's the right place for you. I can remember you saying a few weeks back, like a few people dropped out, and like just sometimes it's not that, like maybe that's not where you want to be. Like, but you figured that out by doing it, if you know what I mean.
It's
And
perfectly
it's the only way.
normal. And in many ways, actually, that's the first demonstration of their pragmatism. If they're dropping out, it's because they know they didn't get what they want, and they need to go somewhere else. And I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing that could happen is if I chased after them and go, please stay.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not right. I think there has to be a conversation at least, about, are you making the right choice? And I want to know how they feel. I don't want to tell them how they feel.
That's one thing that I've always like tried to not preach, but like encourage is like all my friends that I talk to, like say there's anyone who's not necessarily doing something that they want to do yet, is I've always tried to be straight with them, like straight honest with them, and like but in an encouraging way. Like I'm trying to like think like how to word it, but it's like a lot of people can't just be honest with themselves and say, all right, I want to do this. Like they obviously might need a little pushing or encouraging to just get them through like the door, if you know what I mean. And it's like that's why I always felt it, like sometimes you have to choose like the right people to be around, and obviously that's just through experience. Like one of the best things at Abertay was group projects and group collaboration. When we were doing like in third year, we were doing like 3 different courses combined together to form a proper team to design a game. Even though I'm not a game like I wasn't into much game design back then, I then grew more into game design and gained a passion through it, and that was through other people's passion and stuff. So like I think those group stuff as well is vital.
Yeah, I think I would actually like that to start earlier as well. I think we're moving towards that actually. I was having a discussion with Dr. Robin Sloan yesterday, who has, and if anybody doesn't know Dr. Robin Sloan, he's got a book out which is character design for games. It's like an actual academic text on character study and characters in games, which is really interesting. And he's also about to release a Future Learn course. Which you'll find really interesting, which is all about character design for games. So that's actually going to be open to the public for free.
Awesome.
And so we did some video stuff for that the other day, and we got the footage back the other day. It looks great. I look massive on screen though. I also have a bit of a beard going on, which is not my style. Yeah, obviously that'll never go away. It's they call it the soul patch, and I was like, no, not at all. It's just the middle of my eyebrow fell out and landed on my chin. But it's there's the expertise we get around here these days is great, but it's we see so many cool things happening, and the advice here just gets stronger, and we put people all over the world now in terms of placements and jobs. We're really happy about it. And I think the big thing for us is just we're quite happy with the success of the school, and it's just about growing it, investing in it, and trying to make it bigger and better every time, because like everything in life, just as much as is in the student world, it's about you get out of this what you put in. And it's like yeah, sure, I get a salary and I get paid for what I do, but I put more than that in. Always will, always do, because it's worth it.
Yeah, like it's all down to like you enjoying what you do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I go a bit further than passion, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore.
Yeah,
It's love. There's genuine love for what
yeah,
I do,
definitely.
and I think it's so vital. And I think I'm actually very happy as an educator as well. I think
That's
that's important.
amazing.
I'm happy in what I do.
Of course, yeah,
This job does get stressful. There are times when I'm run to the floor,
yeah,
but it's worth it every single time. And even yourself included, you're the reason why we do what we do,
yeah,
just to see you go from strength to strength. And I think we're people. We have a skill set, and I look around us at the teachers and educators we have here,
hmm
and we get better. We look to improve. We look to sort of single out our practice and figure out how it gets better.
hmm
And I see it every year, just like watching people like Ken, people like Robin, even Dana, what he does, our mathematicians, our AI programmers, our games and systems designers, and just watching them become
learn from
better
each other.
practitioners. It's great. That's obviously great. I just wish there was more time for us to do things. Um,
It's always time.
uh,
It's the evil thing. It's always,
time,
yeah.
time.
Talk
so
about time, but then again, oh, that's like that could be like a whole other episode as well. Like talking about
yeah.
time, there's like time management skills, like being able to just
Mhm.
balance time. I know it sounds so simple, but a lot of people overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I think I don't know how qualified I am about time management though. So I'll admit my flaws too.
Yeah,
So but yeah, no, it's been great fun talking to you, Ross. I
yeah,
think
it's been great.
I
Thanks.
I think there's more to talk about. Maybe I should come back sometime.
Yeah,
Just invite
definitely.
myself.
Yeah, that'd be great.
um,
No, but thank you so
but
much
cool.
for the awesome talk. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, guys, please leave a like. Also comment and also subscribe to the channel. That'd be much appreciated. There'll be more content coming through in the next coming weeks and months. So thanks again. But bye for now, and thanks for watching.
Thank you very much, Ross. I'll see you another time.
Thank you.